Hello, over all you COVID-19 survivalists out there that are new pistol owners. Just thought I'd give you a quick video about rounds, bullets, ammunition. You've now been training with your firearm for a while, using hopefully snap caps, as we've described over here earlier in time. But now we're going to go into a bit more in terms of now you're about to actually try and purchase ammunition. The question that you want to look at, especially as you're seeing this right here, is what kind of ammunition do I need to buy? What's the purpose of it for? And most importantly, is the caliber of ammunition going to be the same for all weapons? The quick answer to that is no. Let's go into it now and find out what. So, you've purchased your firearm. You've read your owner's manual. You know that you have a 9mm caliber pistol. What does 9mm mean? Are there different kinds of 9mm? Are there different purposes of 9mm? Does a large gun that's carried 9mm different than that of a smaller one? These are questions that you're probably asking yourself. And if you were great enough to be able to follow my video on the first purchase that you get is to get snap caps in the projected caliber of your firearm, then that's going to be the best thing to be able to do first, because there are going to be characteristics that the firearm is going to show when it has a bullet or projectile in it than it would be when you're just simply dry firing or that it's empty. And you want to be able to train with that effectively and yet safely without causing injury to yourself or those around you. So as for 4 basic safety rules, you want to be able to always assume that the firearm is loaded, and you want to also assume that you do not want to point it in anything in any direction unless it's something that you want to destroy. Okay, so what I have with me here is one of my favorite of all time pistols. This is actually one of my home defense pistols, and this is my very classic Sauer P226 Legion Edition. The reason why I'm showing this that's important is because of the fact that if you notice, right here on the top, right there on the barrel, it says 9mm Para Sig, 9mm Parabellum Sig Sauer. So if you don't know what caliber your particular firearm is going to be, the one thing you want to do is first know that before you purchase. But if you can't or don't remember, then go ahead and look to your owner's manual. If you're not sure after your owner's manual, you can also be able to look it up online or be able to contact a pro shop and they'll be able to tell you what it is. What you see in front of you right now are actually several projectiles that are in 9mm for different uses. But before we go into these particular uses for these type, let's look at what 9mm means. So when you look up 9mm, you go, what does that really mean? Does that mean that's just how large the bullet is? Is it just a naming convention? What does that, carry to? The answer is that it carries to several things. The 9mm bullet has been around for over 100 years, since 1902, and has had several variations up to, these are the main 4 variations, from 380 ACP, yes, that is a type of 9mm, which is used mainly for smaller size pistols. Unfortunately, it's been mischaracterized only for females to be able to use that have a weaker wrist strength and want to use something like a pocket pistol. And it does use a 9.02mm bullet, if you notice this. But the OAL, or overall length, is a little bit less than what the standard is at 25mm. The standard, like with my 6 Sauer, is actually at 9x19 Parabellum, or 9mm Luger. And the reason why that is the most common 9mm that's used, with an overall length of 29.69mm. So, does that make a big difference as opposed to something like this 9x18mm? Yes, 9x18 versus 9x19 can be the difference between a functioning pistol and one that is not functioning well at all. Just because it may fit into the actual barrel or in the chamber does not mean that it may fire properly. In fact, just to let you know quickly, there are on average, about 17 types of 9mm rounds that are available. So whenever you're shopping online, especially with a lot of stores being closed and you don't have staff to be able to help you, you want to look at, usually, especially for those sold in the United States, 9x19 Parabellum, 9mm Luger. That's what these are. Okay? Look at this. You even have 9x21, 9x23, 9x25, 9mm Largo, Mauser, all are different types of projectiles that you may have to face in terms of being in purchasing, because manufacturers do manufacture and sell rounds for weapons that have been around for over 100, 150 years and still for use today. So let's look at the main types down here. So what we have is, of course, our snap cap, which we'll kind of get out of the way here. We're not using that anymore. That's our training and practice round that we use strictly for being able to understand our firearm a little bit better and to be able to show the characteristics of that firearm without it discharging any kind of projectile. The second one that we have right here is what we really call our ball round, which is one used mainly for the range and for practice, which costs about anywhere from about 30 to 38 cents per round. These are mainly used at ranges and at least expensive, as well as they'll be the indoor-outdoor ranges as well as private property. But they're not to be really used as a defensive round for self-defense or for home defense. The main reason is because of the fact that this particular end of the projectile here is a ball round, and with the amount of energy at over 937 to over 1,000 feet per second that you can have with this, you are not only going to be able to penetrate the target, but you may be penetrating what's behind that target. So remember, again, the basic rules of firearm safety is know your target and what is behind it. What you don't want to do is, if you have a perceived threat, especially in a home defense situation where you want to stop that threat, but also what it will do is not only stop the threat, but it will also go through that target and drywall the wall behind it, possibly a wooden standing area behind it, which means that it could go into the room of another family member or loved one. Remember, you're responsible for where that bullet travels in a self-defense situation. So we want to stick with a lot of range time when it comes to these particular projectiles. The last three are mainly used for home defense. The first one here is critical defense from a company called Hornady. And these are about 100 grains, which means that tells you about the amount of explosive powder in it. This is a full metal jacket. And if you notice, it's got this little nylon piece up here, and it's got this copper jacket up here, but it's got these slits in it. The same goes for this particular one, which is Hornady's critical duty, which is mainly used by law enforcement, but is also used for civilian use. The last one is Blazer Gold Dot, and these are all considered home defense rounds because the purpose of these particular projectiles is to stop the threat, but it will not penetrate past that threat going into a wall or into a beam behind that threat. They're designed to fragment within the target and to dissipate itself, which may cause more, let's just call it more vascular damage than a standard round would. So if you look at the difference on your left there, you have your standard ball round, which is a solid projectile. Remember, this is the casing that's going to be ejected. And then you have here what people will call a hollow point. These are perfectly legal to use for self-defense. So these are ones that dissipate at that spread of the energy, okay? So these are only really to be used for self-defense, home situation. You do want to occasionally fire these at the range occasionally, just to make sure that, that it fires properly. People assume that just because you use a standard ball round that you can automatically use a self-defense round in at range, and you want to make sure that they fire both of them properly. This is just a small example of a 9mm round versus a 45 caliber ACP round that is used in a lot of weapons that want to use a larger caliber. This was a classic round used in the 1911 of World War II and is actually still very widely used today. It's a little bit heavier, slightly slower, does a little bit more damage than the 9mm in terms of a ball round because of its larger size, but at the same time it's very effective. I like both. But because of today's ballistics, in which we should be able to change, especially with the new Hornady and other companies with their self-defense rounds, I find that these are much more affordable to shoot as opposed to the 45, which is very expensive, even in ball round form, and it's still very effective. I hope this was able to work for you. Please be careful when you're shopping around and looking for those rounds of ammunition to get. Know the difference between home defense rounds as well as range rounds and ball rounds. If there's any questions, of course, give me a shout. I'll be able to answer them for you. Take care and have a great evening.